Oh my gosh, I have been so looking forward to this moment when I get to have the great, the wonderful, the awesome Pam Greger as my guest. I mean, look, anytime I get to talk with Pam is a treat, and no matter who's interviewing who, but for me, it's just a pleasure to, be with her and be with you, my friend. I feel like we're friends,
Of
even
course
though
we
we
are.
haven't known each other very long. I feel like we're bound at the hip because we have such a shared purpose. So welcome, Pam.
Thank you for that beautiful, warm introduction, Hope. And it's a joy to be with you. I love your work. And I was just saying to Hope before she pressed the record button to congratulate her on what a service she did for humanity back at Lionsgate at Mount Shasta with the group she led there to, I think the words were pierce the film
Yes.
for humanity and Merlin. And I think Lord Yeshua said that you had exceeded all expectations in piercing the film, and that tear continues to get larger and larger. So the truth will just keep on coming out and change the world for humanity. But that was a major initiation point. So, I can see you sprouting wings for that.
Well, first of all, thank you for mentioning that. I have said before, and I will say again, that understanding where we were astrologically and how that aligned through you, understanding that through you was really the thing I was hanging on to. Because look, I get told so many months in advance where I'm supposed to go and when I'm supposed to be there, but I don't have a clue what the astrology is, what it is I'm supposed to do. And when I had your steady voice sort of saying, no, this is important. This moment that you've dowsed to be on the mountain at that precise moment, this is the lineup. And that just gave me so much more courage and conviction. And,
Oh,
but this is why I wanted us to talk again, because these collaborations are so important. And whether they're happening on the level where we are, whether they're happening on the level wherever anybody else is, I hope people will sort of put their antennae up and recognize that these connections are not random. That the people who drop into your circle, your life at a particular moment when you're questioning, or there's guidance happening all the time.
and it was great fun. I mean, we were in cahoots and you were sending me messages at dawn, and it was like an adventure. It was like a wild sort of spiritual adventure we were on. So it was so much fun. So I was very happy to be involved, from my English base here. It was thrilling.
Well, it really made a difference and gave it context.
Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, what's really tempting is to zero in on the current astrology. But before we do that, because I want this to be an evergreen show, it just so happens that the current astrology, here we are on March 19th, 2025, is quite a big bang lineup. And I do want to talk about it a little bit. But before we do that, I would love people to get to know you as a human being, not just the extraordinary astrologer that you are. We get a strong sense of you in your incredible, generous postings. I think everybody gets a sense of you. But I actually would like to know a little bit about how you came to this. Where did all this start? Where were your curiosities? And at what age?
Yeah, this all, I mean, from about the age of 14, I remember writing to Canada House in London saying, I'm going to emigrate to Canada. And they said, well, you have to wait till you're at least 18. I said, well, I'm coming. So anyway, I finished my degree, and the day after my degree, I had $100 in my pocket, way before the age of mobile phones, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job, got on a plane to Toronto and started a new life there. And in the first week, I mean, if I look back to the astrology, now it was a massive time of personal growth, physical travel and metaphysical travel. And in the first week, I joined a yoga class. There was a big guy from Jamaica there. And at the end of the class, a couple of the girls said, he's an astrologer. So I went up to him and said, look, I know nothing about this, but it's kind of intriguing me. I'd love you to do my chart. And the next weekend, I spent about 7 hours with him, and it just blew my mind. And he was able to go back in my life and identify specific dates and events and blah, blah, blah. And I haven't stopped studying since that moment. And he disappeared soon after. I think he was an earth angel, just, meant to reconnect me. But it
And
was remarkable.
what was it that made Canada be the magnet for you?
Well, actually, I've got very interesting astrocartography running through Canada because my Mercury line runs straight through Toronto. So that's the place I got into the communication business, etc. But it was the nature, really, big skies, big mountains, big lakes, space. And I lived there for 5 years, got Canadian citizenship. It was possible at the time to get that with even keeping my British citizenship. And I had a wonderful time. It was the winters that did me in and brought me back to the UK. But I just loved the space and at the time, the level of personal freedom that you had in Canada. So it was a huge adventure, it was all on my own and kind of creating a new life from nothing. So it was super. I loved it. And also, when you go to a new geography like that completely on your own, you can reinvent yourself because you're completely anonymous. Who shall I be in this new land, sort of thing. So yeah, I loved it. It was a great time for personal growth.
Had you at 14 seen a movie or something about Canada? I mean, what do you think was
I
the
think I just sort of had seen a lot of videos, picture books, and because I love nature so much, and so much of it seemed pristine and unpolluted and unspoiled, it was just a real kind of heart connection to the land, really. But I know that because of my going there had connected me to astrology, which had connected back to obviously other lifetimes where I absolutely know I worked as an astrologer. I even know who I was and what my name was and all of that. So I'm just picking up the threads, and possibly that would not have happened so quickly if I hadn't gone to Toronto. Because for me, my Mercury, which runs straight through Toronto, rules my eighth house of spirituality and my career. So a
ah,
spiritual career was born as well as getting into the corporate communication business. The spiritual direction of my career was born when I landed in Toronto. And I had some pretty funny, wild moments there as well, but that's for another that's for another time.
I don't know. We could hear a wild moment. Do you want to share one?
Oh, it was so funny, actually. I remember going from the airport on the shuttle bus. I remember all of this into the western area of Toronto, and I had no idea where I was. And that's the Chinatown area of Toronto. I don't know if I even dare tell this, actually, but anyway, I had to find a very cheap place to stay. And I still remember the name. It's called the Asia Hotel on Yonge Street. And it was very cheap, but there were odd people that seemed to be, coming and going quite a lot. I don't know if I dare to tell this, coming and going quite a lot. Anyway, I lived there for 6 weeks until I got a job and an apartment, and life moved on. But I was told by several people sometime later that it was one of the biggest brothels in the city. And I spent 6 weeks living it, never been propositioned, completely crossed my radar, but it was hilarious. But there's some very unusual people coming and going. So that was my wild beginning to Toronto. But it settled down a bit after that, and off we went into a new adventure.
That's just so courageous, but I'm kind of thinking back and, we did things like that
Yeah.
then.
We felt immortal. We felt
Yeah, we
immortal.
just got up and did things and went places without knowing anything, but confident we'd figure it out.
Yeah.
And that is I'm not so sure that's prevalent these days so much.
Such a sense of freedom that
Yeah.
we had then, I think. And, I know you've done huge travel, Hope, and particularly to Nepal. And I spent about 5 months after I left Canada traveling around India and Nepal, the Himalayas, again, all on my own, just finding some Sherpas that could take me up to 19,000 feet. And that was one of the best things I ever did in my life, spending 5 months out there on my own. And it was magnificent, actually. There's some hairy moments there as well, but it was an amazing adventure. And, you just didn't even think about, will I be okay? Just off you went. And I know you have a strong connection to Nepal and the Himalayas as well, with all the work you're doing out there.
Well, what was it? So you came back to England and then you were there for a short time and then you just went off again on 5 months?
I didn't even bounce into England. I just went straight from Canada to India.
Oh,
And off I went, with a backpack. I'd done a very basic weekend martial arts course, which I needed to use sadly a couple of times. But yeah, I just had a backpack, and off I went. And it was just such an adventure. Every moment was an adventure, because in those days, I mean, I barely met another Western person at the time. Certainly in Nepal, I hardly saw another Western person, because it was a closed kingdom for
Yeah.
many years. I think until the late 70s or something, mid 70s. It was quite late that it opened up as a country. And so I just didn't encounter Western people. And then Nepalese people are beautiful, as you well know. You're so connected to them. They're really humble, beautiful, pure people. And I just loved every moment. So yeah, and I went back to the Himalayas several times, and yeah, they're some of the best times in my life, I think. And the being up in the mountains with the air so thin, you get into rhythm with nature, going to bed with the sun, getting up with the sun, and the simplicity and joy of that. And I remember when I finally had to come back down, I actually had arranged a job in central London, believe it or not. And coming back down the mountain, I was thinking, gosh, life is so incredibly beautiful and simple if we tune into the natural rhythms, and it's us that make it complicated. And
Mm.
the air just got heavier, literally, as I was coming back down the mountain, and there was a flood, and we couldn't get across. The bridge had been washed away, and I missed my flight back to London, and got into all kinds of other adventures. But I never, and then a job in central London was a hell of a shock to the system after that. It was the purity of that experience of being high in the mountains. But I'm so glad I did that. My love of nature, and that the Himalayas, you will know very well, Hope, the sacredness. There's a
Mhm.
kind of divinity in the land, and a purity and an ancient wisdom that they still have, that we have just lost in our modern lives. So that was really, and I know I've had past lives there too, I'm sure you have, but it was beautiful. It was worth all of the challenges along the way. It was really beautiful.
I'm struck by the simplicity and the joy that you mentioned from that high place in the mountains. Excuse me. Because just in your latest broadcast, you talked a lot about that. You talked about finding the joy in the chaos. You talked about just being, finding the simplicity of being. And, you know, I've had my own version of that. And if I didn't have that touch point,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have something to refer back to. Oh, yeah, that's what it's like. And you have it in spades. I mean, my goodness, this is this incredible journey that you took. And sounds to me like it was a calling, like the mountains were calling you to them, sort of like the man in Toronto. I mean, Toronto, yes, but it seemed to me to be the gentleman who taught you the astrology was calling you and calling you to your cause, calling you to your purpose. So for people who may not have had that kind of pinnacle moment, you know, I'd like to sort of talk about that a little bit about how you can still establish it any day. Or maybe there's a little voice in the back of our heads that is saying, get thee to the mountains or to the ocean or whatever it is. But I just like to just talk about that a little bit because it's never too late, is it?
Absolutely not. And beautiful. You've really observed that beautifully. Thank you, Hope, because I mean, it was a silent journey in a way, because they didn't speak a word of English. The Sherpas who were with me, they couldn't say hello, goodbye, thank you, nothing. So they would bring me a bowl of hot water in the morning to wash, and I learnt quickly you had to start at the kind of teeth and work down. And but it was, they'd pull back the tent door. And always at sunrise, they'd pitch the tent facing east. So there were three of them and one of me, and that was it. That was, this wasn't a big, that was it. And they looked after me so well. But they'd pitch the tent facing east, so I could always see the sunrise. And then equally, I'd sit with them in the evening around the fire and watch the sun go down. And it's that simple. I was recently on holiday with some friends in Gran Canaria, and the thing that captured me in that week more than anything else were the sunrises and the sunsets. They
Mm.
blew me away with the new light codes that are coming in, because in England it's so cloudy. We have to struggle to see sunrises and sunsets. So the simple joy of just sitting and observing this miracle every day of the sunrise and the sunset just touches me. That is worth gold dust. It's such a precious moment. And even just sitting with your feet on the grass, the feet on the earth, and just tuning into the bird song, and then the silence, and then the sound beyond the silence. And just, all those four free, simple moments can bring a profound sense of connection to something sacred again.
Mhm.
But I think that, that travel in the Himalayas, as you say, Hope, was an absolute touchstone, and it was so powerful for me that I've never forgotten it. It's kind of in my soul, as it were.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's why I think simplicity is the way through all of this mess and chaos, because it creates an inner state of being, of stillness and peace. And I've talked about booking more stillness meetings with yourself. It's that sense of silence, stillness, just turning off the tech and just dropping into your a deep sense of being, dropping into your breath. And from that's what you create your reality with.
Right.
Your sense of being is your absolutely top priority to create your reality. And that ripples out to infect other people positively too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I couldn't agree more. I want to just add in there, just throw in the wave, the infinity wave, just a little bit, because when and just, when we drop into that place of stillness and we, take the infinity wave and run it, because sometimes it's really hard to quiet the mind. But if we take the mind and put its attention on this shape and this watery flow, now it can't do two things at once. It just is constant, kind of like a mantra, but more fun, more whatever. And I know you felt this, but I'm just reiterating it because for the very same reason, when we drop into that state of purified love and compassion, that beingness of love and compassion, that is the radiating energy that moves out in all directions from us, right? And
I use that every day, Hope, your infinity wave. And I recommend it to so many, if things are stuck or not flowing properly, I recommend it to so many. I use it every day. Bless
it's thank you. It's a really useful tool. I mean, it's unbelievable. But I find it very good for this dropping in, for this stillness. And I'm not trying to insert myself into your interview, but it is a tool to consider in this beingness, in this quest for beingness. It's not even a quest, it's an allowing of beingness. And I just love that you are really consistent in delivering that reminder to everybody. I hear it and I go, "Oh, did I do that today?" So,
you.
it helps me too. So, anyway, we'll say, okay, so you go to Nepal and the Himalayas, you come back to the center of London. That's a rude awakening if ever there was one. And then, but this is so important because how we take that stillness, how we take that incredible oneness at oneness with the all that is into a busy life. How do we maintain our our core, our alignment, that stillness while we're also in the chaos? And this is when you mentioned having the joy in the chaos. I was just like, oh, yes, that is what it's about. Because when we're in chaos, and you could speak to this, but my sense is when we're in chaos, we get afraid.
Yeah. And we contract.
We do. Change is happening. Ooh,
Yeah.
I want to stay in my cave. Everything's fine, and but that's not the purpose of chaos, is it? The
No,
purpose of chaos is to, right? You say, I don't want to take
it's
words.
where it was very interesting. Thank you, Hope. It was very interesting talking to the cosmologist, Dr. Jude Caravan, about this from a science point of view, because she was saying the point of chaos, the times of chaos are where all the energy is freed up, which I'd sort of understood from the laws of physics anyway. And that is the greatest potential leap that you have into a different state of being, because it isn't just same old linearity, it's a jump because all the energy is just freed up. So kind of welcome the chaos, and the astrology helps me immensely to make sense of this. I don't know where I'd be without the astrology, frankly, but it gives me the template, it gives me the language to say, this is meant to be happening now. Yes, it's turbulent. Yes, it's chaotic. Yes, the old world is crashing. Yes, we're losing trust in governments and corporations and leaders and blah, blah, blah. And it's meant to be happening. And I would be very surprised if it wasn't happening.
Mhm.
So that's really reassuring, I think, for people, that even if it seems kind of the world's out of control, it isn't, because it has to collapse before it reforms fully. And we are the co-creators in reforming this raw energy, this raw kind of creator energy, if you like, that with which we've got more of a blank canvas than we've ever had before, because it's such a jump for humanity. I'm sure you feel that in your bones, Hope.
Oh, it's what I've been honestly teaching about since the wave came in, because those were the messages that came with the wave. And this was something to be preparing for. And that change doesn't happen from a complacent place. Why change? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But
Uh,
in the chaos is the opportunity for a new idea, for a new state, a change of state. And we are, and I love that the astrology is right on track with this. You have to remember, I was non into astrology, not into astrology when all this was starting to happen. And I'm sure if you track back 15 years, you could probably see the paces already in place for where we are now, right? I didn't have that purview. So finding, later along the pathway that the astrology is right there for it. Oh my, that's huge for me. And you are so good at explaining it to the layperson.
Thank you.
You really are. You
Thank
make
you.
sense of it. Now, I think, sorry, I've got a thing. I think we should just touch on, because we are right here at the equinox, and it's a very important moment for the entire year. So let's just touch on the most important points about it. In particular, I would love to talk about the Sun, Pluto, Neptune, Sedna thing. And I also want to touch on what you don't use this word, but it's it's underpinning a lot of your suggestions that are very kindly put forth, but it's a kind of spiritual discipline.
Yes.
Okay. And so let's just talk about those two things now, because they're tied together, right?
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Hope. And it's the spiritual discipline can be things we've just talked about. The
Mhm.
spiritual discipline can be watching the sunrise, watching the sunset, feet on the grass. It doesn't have to be, I'm
Yeah.
hand mudra sitting, it doesn't have to be, it's that simple connection to whatever you feel is sacred and divine, which drops you into the stillness. It can
Yeah.
be that, so it doesn't have to be complicated and rituals and ceremonies, etc. So, yes, you mentioned the Pluto. I mean, clearly we have the sun moving onto zero of Aries tomorrow at the equinox. That happens reliably every year, as we know, the Aries equinox. And astrologers see that as the beginning of the astrological new year, not January the 1st, but this crossing of the zero of the cardinals by the sun into Aries. And so, but it's like a kind of undertone or a big gong striking that sets up what's going to be coming for the rest of the year. And then many other layers of paint go on top. But of course, we have the Aries equinox every year, but this is a particularly powerful one because of all of the other astrology that's happening. This is the biggest 2025, I think, the biggest year of transition we are going to have, because within the next 13 months, all of the outer planets are going to change sign. That is remarkable. That hasn't happened for at least 300 years. But if I also add in the dwarf planets that are just changing sign, I can't find a time in history where there was so much energetic change, and it's moving from heavy, slow earth and water signs generally into air and fire. Life is not going to slow down anytime soon. It's going to be very fast. So that's why the Aries equinox this year is so important. And on top of that, we have at the end of March, 30th of March, we have Neptune moving into 0 of Aries, which it hasn't done since April 1861. It's got a 165-year orbit. And then that's closely followed by Saturn on the 25th of May. And so by July, they will be holding hands exact to the degree at 0 of Aries, and they will be by 20th of February next year, exact to the minute, 20th of February, exact to the minute. Now, that is a conjunction that happens reliably every 36 years, but it doesn't happen at 0 of Aries, the very first degree of the zodiac, which is pure potential, if you like, pure potential for us to create from. I call it the creator degree. And so you have to go back thousands of years, many thousands of years since that happened at 0 of Aries. So we have some incredibly, I could make a whole list here, incredibly rare things happening in the astrology. And it's the rarity that gives the potency.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the move of Neptune over that 0 degrees. So the Aries equinox is activating that 0 of Aries, which it does every year, but it's going to be followed up quickly by Neptune at that point, and then 25th of May by Saturn. And they're going to be back and forwards across that point until they stabilize in February 2026. And Saturn will stay there for 2.5 years, and then Neptune for, it stays there till about 2039, it stays there a long time. But it's this initiation point. So if anyone has planets between, or angles between sort of 0 and 2 degrees of the cardinal signs, particularly Aries, you may be called into spiritual leadership at this time. Mm. And it's very much about spirituality coming to the fore, because 0 of Aries is the public stage, coming onto the public stage in a bigger way. So spirituality will be bigger, and everything, chanting, sacred music, all of the things, meditation, all of the things associated with that. And it's being your own spiritual hero.
Yes.
I think we're going to be done with external authority. I hope to heavens we are. It's becoming your own spiritual hero and authority is a big part of this. Once Saturn joins Neptune in May, it's very much about spiritual discipline for sure, but putting into practice in a concrete way your ideals, your spiritual ideals, into the world in terms of daily practice, making real the dream. Mm-hmm. Making real the dream. So this whole period, because it's such a massive new episode for humanity, is about, do you dare to dream a new dream? Who are you already becoming? Who are you already becoming? So notice your dreams, keep a dream journal. Neptune's about dreams. Notice your meditations, notice just conversations, messages, nudges that come in. Who are you meant to be becoming if you haven't sussed it already? Because it's a very different episode where you have much higher psychic sensitivity than you've ever had before, greater telepathic abilities, healing abilities, tuning into animals, trees, plants, birds, this sense of ancient Lemurian oneness that you probably haven't felt in this lifetime or for many lifetimes. It's this sense of we are all one consciousness. So that's the kind of that part of it. And then moving on to the sort of Pluto Sedna, and I include Homer in that. Pluto is the planet of transformation, and it is currently square a dwarf planet called Homer. That is a very strong regenerative principle that is all about birthing babies all over her body, reversing her age, creating the 8 islands of Hawaii from this kind of eruptive regenerative process that she has. And they are both in strong geometry to Sedna. And people have heard me talk about the myth of Sedna, where she was rescued from an inappropriate marriage by her father. A storm blew up. They were both in the canoe. Her father threw Sedna over the edge of the canoe. And when she tried to climb back on and clung on with her fingers, he chopped her fingers off. So father patriarchy does not come well out of this, but although she drowned, her fingers became these beautiful sea creatures. So Pluto is the planet of transfer. I've made a whole video on this actually called Metamorphosis for Humanity, because Pluto is the planet of transformation. Hermia is the planet of regeneration and changing your state. And Sedna is an even bigger archetype for changing your state, a complete metamorphosis from the human we have known into a different biology, a different being in our DNA. We're moving to crystalline, we're moving towards the light body, etc. Now that geometry, that wonky triangle, is going to stay in place for several years to come, till round about 2028. So that is incredibly powerful as a kind of underlying humming geometry on which many other things are going to be layered. But that's the really big stuff, if you like, archetypally.
I just love the way you do this. And I'm thinking of that triangle, and I'm thinking of the actual, instrument, the
Oh,
triangle,
yes, the triangle. Yes, beautiful.
just ringing it out, chiming the bell. This is so absolutely fantastic. And I feel like we've entered that portal, right? That's what we're going through. It's interesting because just last week, I went and did a channeling just for myself, just to touch in with folks and see how we're doing. And I had recently been on a retreat and starting to, in earnest, write my second book. And the second book is different than the first, because first is just about the wave, but the second book is about all the paranormal experiences that I had leading up to and then after the wave came in, as a way to say, when you decide to kind of, without having your fingers chopped off, but let go of the boat and let source catch you, when you let it go, surrender to source, things are going to start to look pretty wonky. Like, you're not going to see things the same way. And you might start to get nervous. So here are some things that have happened that are my version of it. You're going to have your own, but don't worry, it'll be okay. It's kind of a comforting book, meant to be at least. Anyway, so I was just checking in with the guides. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? I was very happy doing it. And Yeshua comes in and says, not so much the book, no. What you need to be doing, two things. You need to be gathering people as often as you can. And this speaks to what you were just saying. We're coming together in doing this. It is the group consciousness. It is the oneness. He said, do it in your home, do it wherever, Timbuktu, wherever. Do as many gatherings as you possibly can. I said, okay, I'll do that. And then I need to start a school of some sort, because I need to train people to then go out and teach the wave to others, so that it's not just me. So I got my marching orders, but it seems like it's absolutely perfectly timed with this great ringing of the triangle to, be in community more and
Community is
more.
huge. Yeah, because Pluto in Aquarius is about community, grassroots up. It's about freedom, humanitarianism. It's about networks of information and connection, like mycelium roots, like tree roots in a forest.
Yes.
It's all about that kind of emotional connection and information connection, that people I call it a family of frequency, people on the same frequency can connect, whether it's online or even better in person, to help to shift the power back to the people, which is what Pluto in Aquarius is all about in historical cycles, and help us to step back into our sovereignty.
Yeah, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And so now I'm going to just take this because, you and I have had a few texts back and forth about this revelation. I guess it was one of those frying pan moments, duh, I should have figured it out long ago. But I read, excuse me, Chris Bledsoe's book, UFO of God. I mentioned it to you last fall. And it's a beautiful story about his encounters, and many, daily, really, at this point, with these other dimensional beings. And after reading that, I came to a realization, this is the frying pan, that I've been observing so much for decades about the ET question, about the phenomena, let's put it that way. And it's been on a track over here, and then normal life was here, and then my spiritual life was here. So it's basically three tracks, right? Running parallel. Well, when the wave came in, my spiritual life and my normal life finally came together. But I realized, oh, this ET track is still way over here. And what, how do I make sense of it? I think a lot of people feel that way. How do we, well, it's curious, it's interesting. It's what we have been programmed so much to be afraid of it, to doubt it, to discard it, to whatever, as we know. So when I read Chris's book, I realized that this was sitting over here on a separate track. And it dawned on me that all that we've been talking about, this incredible opportunity that we have in this chaos to emerge as something different, as the new human, that it's possible that they are going to be the ones to help us over a hump or two.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Talk about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I have absolutely no doubt, Hope. I am 100% with you. I think they are. I think they're ever. In fact, I don't think I've said this publicly either. But a new friend was coming to visit me a short time ago, and she hadn't been to where I live, and I'm slightly tricky to find. So I said, "Did you find me okay?" And she said, "Oh yes, I just followed the spaceship over your house." So okay, that's fine. Come on in. So so I mean, so many people that I'm sure, and I'm sure you're doing this too, and that I know are channeling galactic beings, channeling Palladians, Arcturians, Andromedans. This is almost my normal world now, so it's not kind of weird. I mean, it's almost bread and butter time.
Right.
And I've been having some conversations with a wonderful English chap called Dr. David Clements that you might have heard, and he was
Yes.
originally theoretical physicist and very mainstream. And then his life changed when the Palladians and the Arcturians and now other beings are starting to direct him to build regenerative therapy, regenerative devices to help humanity. So I mean, he is just one example. I'm sure there are thousands of people out there who are saying, how can I get this galactic guidance for humanity? And we are also galactic beings, let's not forget,
Yes.
to help them through this ascension. Because as I understand it, and Hope you may have a clearer idea on this, but I understand that the Earth has a particularly pivotal point in this whole upgrade, because it isn't just the evolution for the Earth, it's the evolution of the entire universe, because everything is fractal.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
dominoes. It's click, click, if we get it right, then click it, it echoes right through the whole universe. So that's why there is such a high level of galactic interest in what we're doing, that we won't mess it up. So I don't know if you've got any input on that. I'm sure you have.
Well, it's interesting. Once a month, I do a channeling for a small group of people, and it was last Monday night. So 2 nights ago. And we had quite a lot of people asking questions of a variety of the beings who came in. And of course, very concerned about our times and, what should we expect? And of course, so they got some they got some pretty clear answers that, we are on this precipice and this is definitely happening. And Merlin talked about how this is the Earth's time, that he talks, and anyway, that the Earth itself, the physical Earth, is like our body, and then the soul of the Earth is Gaia. So she inhabits the Earth, right? And she makes everything happen. Well, the very last visitor was Gaia. And I have channeled Gaia only a few times in the past, but this time she came through, and I'll send you the recording. I kind of don't dare look at it because I could feel my face like achieving 20,000 lines like a prune, My eyes are closed, thank God. But, I could feel everything just tightening up like this. And her voice was very low and warm and loving, so loving. And she said, "Don't worry about me. I'm on this." we're going to do this together. I'm not sure how. Nobody really knows how this birth process is going to happen, including me, said Gaia. But it's going to be fine. And you all, the people who were gathered, but all who are listening to this, are a part of this birthing process. And you're all helping to make it what it is. And so she couldn't have been more reassuring and kind of there's so much focus on us, the things that are wrong on the planet. And she really was asking us not to do that. That doesn't mean don't clean up your trash and don't be mindful. It just means don't get heavy in your heart. She's going to change it all if she needs to. She's done it before, right? And she'll do it again. But this time is different. This birth is something that has been long in conversation with the galaxy, with the sun, with the whole shebang. And it's a new level. Yeah, because I was curious about the other times when we've had extinction events. We obviously have signs of it all over the planet of previous civilizations, something I'm fascinated with, and I know you are too. So I was wondering if this one would be different from that. Well, it is different from that. It is. And your astrology and how you have it all lined up points to that. This is kind of a, not just a once in a lifetime, but a once in a galactic eon. I don't know how else to describe it. Right?
Yeah, I think you are absolutely spot on, Hope. I honestly do. And all that you're receiving and sharing is absolutely spot on because, as I understand, it's the first time we've actually ascended in physicality. It's a whole biological change going on, which is a one-way process. As I've often said, you can't stuff the butterfly back into the caterpillar. This is a one-way process. And because the frequency is increasing to such a degree, we are all being propelled by that frequency, which is breaking up the lower density energy on which the old world was formed. And that's why the old world will collapse, the old structures will collapse, because the energy is just crumbling because of the high frequency energy coming in. And that's the high frequency energy of Gaia, it's the high frequency energy of us as humanity increasingly, and the galactics are supporting that. So because everything is one consciousness, the whole universe is one consciousness, isn't it? So this is going beyond division, separation, polarization. I mean, ascension is way bigger than who's in charge in politics. It's just way, it's way bigger. It just doesn't matter because it's a much bigger picture than that. And the astrology that we have coming up, and I'm planning in the next sort of week or so to do a kind of really big picture of what's happening in the next 3 years, particularly because we have some astrology that has literally never ever happened before, literally never ever happened. And if the astrology has never ever happened before, then that means the process that we're evolving through has never ever happened before. It's taking a different, it's taking a different form. So that's where my head is at, down a rabbit hole at the moment.
I'm glad your head is down that rabbit hole because that is a really incredible rabbit hole, really intriguing. I'm covered with chills.
That's a good sign.
I know that the words of truth have been spoken. And this is, oh my gosh, so let's just touch back with, you mentioned, people are wondering how they can get some kind of galactic guidance from our galactic family. And this is what I'm on about. I really feel, and maybe the astrology is pointing to it in the sense of this spiritual hero thing, because it dawned on me that I had a responsibility as a member of the human family and the galactic family to start that connection myself, to, even if I don't hear anything back, and I do sometimes, I want to start communicating my desire to, be in contact, to be in love, to be taught, to be widen my aperture even more. Let's wave, literally wave to our neighbors and say we're friendly. Because there's a lot of information that isn't so friendly. But I think if each one of us would go in the backyard at nighttime or at daytime, whenever, when you're watching the sunset, just say, hey, I'm here. I love you. I'm your good neighbor. That could be as simple as that.
I think you're absolutely spot on, Hope. And, you know, if the galactic beings were malevolent, they've had the last 200,000 years to wipe us out. And we haven't done
Exactly.
it yet, so I wouldn't worry. You know, you know, the vast majority are benevolent and here to support us, you know, for our highest good. So yeah, I would absolutely do that. I know someone who actually talks about connecting with the stars in that way. And if you send them love, they will start to wink back and flash and even move a little. Now, whether that's an optical illusion, I don't know, but it's worth a try. And the other thing I would do is, as you're falling asleep at night, say, if it is for my highest good to make connection with my galactic family, please allow those messages to come through in my dreams.
Yes,
I think
beautiful.
that's, yeah, quite a good, you know, if it is for my highest good of all, highest good of the earth, then let those connections come through in my dreams and then just see how it rolls. And many people just meditate on specific planets to kind of tune into their consciousness. I know my good friend Heather Ensworth in America, a wonderful astrologer, she teaches astrology and she teaches people to do that in her classes, to meditate on each of the planets and see, before they learned anything from a textbook, what energy, what consciousness are they receiving from the planets?
Beautiful, beautiful. I love her work. She's amazing. And your conversations with her are wonderful.
She's
Her
just,
energy too is just so lovely.
yeah, very calm. Yeah.
Very calm. Well, okay, I guess we ought to wrap it up. Much as I could love to talk to you for another 3 hours, just to be mindful of your time. Is there anything, Pam, that you would like to finish off with, any kind of message?
Yeah, I think be kind, stay in love, lock onto love as your docking station. Absolutely know that this is a thrilling time for humanity to make this jump and see the excitement, you know, kind of fear and anxiety and excitement are kind of two sides of the same coin. It's kind of that, you know, heightened energy. So if you start to go into fear or contraction, just flip it into excitement and do not get distracted. There are a million things to distract us, and perhaps purposefully, there are a million things to distract us. Have the spiritual discipline to say, I'm not going to go there. If that's going to lower my frequency, I'm not going to listen to it, look at it. I'm on a mission. I am on a mission to make the best possible job I can make of this biggest jump for humanity's evolution ever. And I'm going to be proud at the end of this process to stand tall and say, I could not have done more. I may be standing in the rubble, I may be very dusty, but I could not have done more to help do my bit to help humanity get over the line to this next. And I have no doubt that we all will. It's just, you know, how coherently we'll do it, but I have no doubt that's going to happen.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I love you. I think you're amazing. I'm so happy you're on the planet and that we get to interact like this. And
Well, I love you too, Hope, and I'm thrilled that you are on the planet as well. You are doing amazing work. You really are. So I just want to credit you for that.
thank you so much. All right. Well, this has been one of the best hours of my life. I hope it is also for you. And we will see you next time. Cheers.
Lots of love, everyone. Lots of love.